Grief does strange things to time. People talk about healing as though it arrives naturally, as though pain simply fades if you wait long enough. But grief is not a wound. It is a room you learn to live inside. Some days the room feels larger, some days smaller, yet it never truly disappears. I learned that 8 years ago, the night my daughter died. My name is Daniel Mercer. I am 39 years old, or at least I was when the phone began ringing. Before that, I had been a police officer in Manchester. A good one, according to most people. Reliable, patient, calm under pressure, the kind of man others trusted during their worst moments. Funny how life works. You can spend years helping strangers survive tragedy, then discover you are completely helpless when tragedy arrives at your own door. Emily was 9 years old when she died. She had my eyes, her mother's smile, and a laugh that could brighten even the darkest day. The accident happened on a rainy November evening, the sort of night England specializes in. Wet roads, cold wind, headlights reflected across shining asphalt. I wasn't driving. Emily wasn't even with me. She was returning from a school concert with her mother. A truck crossed into the wrong lane. 3 people died. The newspapers called it a terrible accident. The courts agreed. Everyone agreed. Everyone except me. Not because I believed in conspiracies, because fathers know things. And somewhere deep inside, I always felt something about that night was unfinished. Something important. Something hidden beneath official reports and legal conclusions. For 8 years I carried that feeling. Then I buried it, along with everything else. After leaving the police force, I moved frequently. Different cities, different apartments, different routines. Anything to escape the memories. Nothing worked. You cannot outrun a ghost that lives inside your heart. Eventually, I rented a small apartment overlooking the Manchester Ship Canal. The building was old. Red brick, narrow hallways, thin walls. The sort of place where neighbors rarely learned one another's names. Perfect for someone who preferred solitude. I moved in on a rainy Thursday. By midnight, most of my belongings remained unpacked. Cardboard boxes filled the living room. The television wasn't connected. The kitchen looked abandoned. I sat alone on the sofa, drinking coffee and listening to rain strike the windows. The apartment felt unfamiliar, temporary, like every place I had lived since Emily's death. At 1 o'clock, I finally went to bed. Sleep arrived slowly, reluctantly. Then the phone rang. The sound shattered the silence. My eyes opened immediately. For several seconds, I couldn't understand where I was. The darkness felt strange, the room unfamiliar. Then the phone rang again. I glanced toward the bedside table. 2:17 a.m. Exactly. The screen glowed softly. Unknown number. I frowned. Most people no longer received mysterious late-night calls. Spam callers preferred daylight. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Then instinct took over. Years in law enforcement teach you certain habits. I answered. Hello, nothing. Only static. A faint crackling sound. Like an old radio searching for a signal. I waited. Hello. The static continued. Then, very softly, I heard breathing. My grip tightened around the phone. Who is this? Silence. A long silence. Then, the line clicked. A tiny sound, almost imperceptible, and a voice whispered, "Daddy." Everything inside me stopped. The room vanished. The years vanished. The world vanished. Only that voice remained. "Daddy." I sat upright so quickly the blankets fell to the floor. My heart slammed against my ribs. No, the word escaped before I realized I had spoken. No, because I knew that voice. Not similar, not familiar, identical. Emily. The call ended. The screen went dark. The apartment became silent once more. I remained frozen in bed, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to think. Eventually I checked the call log. No number, no record, nothing. As though the call had never happened. I didn't sleep again that night. The following morning, I convinced myself grief had finally broken me. Hallucinations happen, especially to people carrying unresolved trauma. I knew the statistics, I knew the psychology, I knew all the reasonable explanations. Yet none of them felt convincing, because I remembered that voice, every detail, every inflection, every breath. Fathers remember those things. The second call came the next night, again at 2:17 a.m., again from no number, again surrounded by static. This time I answered immediately. Emily. The silence lasted longer. Then came the breathing, soft, uneven, distant, and once more, daddy tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I hadn't heard her voice in 8 years. Not truly. Recordings fade, memories distort, time changes everything, yet this voice remained exactly as I remembered. 9 years old, gentle, trusting, alive. Emily. My voice cracked. The static intensified. For a moment I thought I heard crying. Then the call disconnected. The third night brought another call, then a fourth, then a fifth. Always 2:17. Always the same. Each conversation lasting only seconds. Each ending before I could ask questions. Before I could understand. By the sixth night I had stopped telling myself the calls were impossible. Instead, I found myself waiting for them. Living for them. The way a drowning man waits for air. Then, something changed. The seventh call lasted longer. Much longer. The static seemed weaker. The voice clearer. Almost close enough to touch. I sat on the edge of my bed. Hands trembling. Heart breaking. Listening. For the first time, Emily spoke more than one word. "Dad, I'm here." The silence that followed felt endless. "Then I miss you." Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop them. Didn't want to. "I miss you too." The words escaped like a confession, like a prayer. The static crackled violently, then softened again. "Dad." Yes, a pause. Long, heavy, and then the sentence that changed everything. "Please find me." The room became impossibly cold. I stopped breathing. "What?" The line crackled. "Dad, please find me." Confusion replaced grief instantly. Find her. Emily was buried 8 years ago. I had stood beside the grave. I had carried the coffin. I had watched the earth cover everything I loved most. There was nothing left to find. Yet the fear in her voice felt real. Terribly real. "Emily, where are you?" No answer. Only static. Louder now. More violent. Then came another sound. A sound I recognized immediately. The screech of tires. Metal twisting. Glass shattering. The horrible chaos of a collision. My blood turned to ice, because I knew that sound too. The accident. The exact sound described in every report. The exact sound that had stolen my daughter. The noise grew louder. Emily began crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. The quiet crying of a frightened child. Then the line went dead. The apartment fell silent. I stared at the phone. The screen reflected my face. Older now. More tired. More broken. Yet beneath the grief, another feeling had begun to emerge. Something I had not felt in years. Determination. The same determination that once made me a detective. The same determination that refused to accept incomplete answers. For 8 years I had tried to move forward. To let go. To accept the official version of events. Now a voice from the darkness had shattered all of that. "Please find me." The words echoed through my mind. Again. And again. And again. Outside rain slid down the apartment windows. The city slept beneath clouds and streetlights, but I remained awake, watching the clock, waiting for dawn, because deep inside I knew something terrifying. Emily wasn't calling to say goodbye. She was calling because she wanted me to discover something. Something hidden. Something buried. Something that had waited 8 years to be found. I did not wait for daylight. The moment the seventh call ended, I knew I would never sleep again until I understood what Emily meant. "Please find me." The words echoed through my apartment long after the phone fell silent. For 8 years, I had tried to accept her death. I had attended therapy, left the police force, moved apartments, changed routines, changed cities, changed everything except the one thing that truly mattered, my grief. And now that grief had a voice. My daughter's voice. By 6 in the morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by old case files. The rain outside had not stopped. Manchester looked gray and exhausted beneath the clouds. The city seemed trapped between night and morning. much like me. The accident report lay open before me. I had not looked at it in years. Official cause: driver fatigue. Loss of vehicle control. Collision. 3 fatalities. Case closed. I stared at those words. For the first time they felt incomplete, cold, convenient, as though someone had written the shortest possible explanation and hoped nobody would ask further questions. Years ago I had been too broken to question it. Now I wasn't. By noon I was inside the police archives. Old colleagues greeted me politely. Some remembered Emily. Most avoided mentioning her. People often do that. They think silence protects the grieving. Sometimes silence is the thing that hurts most. The original investigation files were extensive. Photographs, witness statements, forensic reports, traffic analysis. Nothing immediately unusual. Yet the longer I examined them, the stranger certain details became. Witness accounts contradicted one another. Timelines shifted. Several statements appeared edited. One page had clearly been replaced. Not illegally. Officially. Legally. Yet someone had modified the report after the initial investigation. My instincts immediately awakened. The instincts I thought had died years earlier. Someone had changed something. The question was why. That evening I returned home exhausted. The apartment felt smaller somehow, as though the walls themselves were listening. I tried distracting myself with television. Failed. Tried reading. Failed. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the phone rang. I answered before the first ring finished. Emily. Static. Breathing. Then her voice. Dad. Clearer now. Much clearer. The sound nearly brought me to tears. I'm here. A pause. Then, you were right. My heart stopped. What? The line crackled. You were right. The sentence repeated. Then silence. I gripped the phone tighter. Emily, what does that mean? No answer. Only static. Then the call ended. The following morning brought another discovery. A retired witness named Thomas Hargreaves agreed to meet me. He had been one of the first people at the accident scene. 73 years old. Nervous. Constantly glancing toward the door of the cafe, as though someone might be listening. When I showed him the old case photograph, his face immediately paled. I told them. Told who? The investigators. His hand shook slightly. What did you tell them? Thomas looked down at his coffee. For several seconds he remained silent, then finally spoke. There was another vehicle. The words hit me like a punch. What kind of vehicle? A black SUV. I stared at him. The official report mentioned no second vehicle. None. Why wasn't it included? Thomas laughed bitterly. Because somebody didn't want it included. The cafe suddenly felt colder. What happened? I saw the SUV force the car off the road. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. What? It crossed the center line. My pulse thundered. You're certain? He nodded. I've lived with that memory for 8 years. The old man swallowed hard. I never forgot. I leaned forward. Why didn't you testify? His eyes filled with shame. Because they convinced me I was mistaken. I said nothing. Thomas continued. Then someone visited me. My stomach tightened. Who, I don't know. Suit. Expensive watch. Professional smile. The old man looked away. He suggested I stop talking. Silence settled between us. Heavy. Terrible. The kind of silence that confirms your worst fears. The accident had not been investigated properly. Someone had interfered. Someone powerful. That night, I didn't wait for the call. Instead, I sat beside the phone in darkness, watching the clock, listening to rain. 2:17 a.m. The ringtone shattered the silence. I answered instantly. Emily. Dad. Her voice sounded closer than ever. Almost normal. Almost alive. My eyes filled immediately. I found a witness. Silence. Then I know. A chill raced through my body. Of course she knew. Whatever these calls were, they were tied to the truth. The line crackled violently. Then Emily whispered, "Look in the mirror." My breath caught. What? Behind you. The call ended. Immediately. I turned. The apartment remained empty. Dark. Silent. Then I looked toward the hallway mirror. A reflection stared back. Mine. and someone else's. A little girl stood behind me, 9 years old. Long brown hair, blue coat. Emily. My heart stopped. She wasn't transparent, wasn't distorted. She looked exactly as she had on the day she died. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Tears streamed down my face. Emily, the reflection, smiled sadly, then pointed toward a box resting on top of a bookshelf. A box I hadn't opened since moving in. The image vanished. The mirror showed only me, shaking, crying, terrified. I climbed onto a chair and retrieved the box. Inside were Emily's belongings. Drawings, photographs, school projects, memories. Then I found something unexpected. A small digital recorder. I remembered it immediately. Emily had used it constantly. She loved pretending to be a journalist, interviewing family members, recording random observations. Most files contained harmless childhood nonsense, until I reached the final recording. The date displayed on the screen. The day of the accident. My hands trembled. I pressed play. At first, only laughter. Emily singing. Her mother talking. Then something else. A horn. A sudden scream. Tires. The collision. My entire body froze. Then a man's voice. Only briefly. Only a few words. But enough. Enough to destroy everything. Because I recognized it. Not completely, not consciously, but somewhere deep inside, my instincts reacted instantly. I had heard that voice before, many times. A police officer never forgets voices, especially familiar ones. The recording ended. I sat in silence, heart racing, mind unraveling. The answer remained just beyond reach, like a memory hiding behind fog. Then the phone rang again. Not at 217 this time. Immediately. Unknown number. I answered. Static filled the line. Then Emily spoke. Very softly, very clearly, and for the first time, fear entered her voice. Real fear. Dad, what is it? The static grew louder, as though something was interfering. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. He's still alive. The line disconnected. The apartment became silent. I stared at the phone, unable to move, unable to think, because suddenly I understood. The person responsible for Emily's death had never been punished, never exposed, never stopped. And somewhere out there, after 8 long years, he was still alive. For a long time after the call ended, I sat alone in the darkness. The phone remained in my hand. The screen had gone black, but Emily's final words echoed through the apartment. He's still alive. Outside rain crawled across the windows like tears. Manchester slept beneath clouds and distant streetlights. Yet I felt more awake than I had in years, because for the first time since my daughter's death, grief was no longer the only thing keeping me alive. Now I had purpose. The voice on the recording haunted me. I listened to it dozens of times. Again, and again, and again. The man only spoke for a few seconds. Yet every instinct I possessed told me I knew him. The memory remained hidden beneath years of pain. Buried. Waiting. Then, shortly before dawn, it returned. Not gradually. Violently. Like lightning. The voice belonged to Michael Reeves, my former partner. For several moments, I simply stared at the wall, unable to breathe, unable to think. Michael. Of all the names my mind could have produced, his was the one I least wanted to hear. We had worked together for 7 years, shared cases, shared victories, shared failures. I had trusted him completely. He attended Emily's funeral, stood beside me at the cemetery, held my shoulder while I cried, and now my entire body trembled with a horrifying possibility. No, I told myself. Impossible. Yet the feeling refused to leave. By noon I was digging through old personnel records. Michael had retired 3 years earlier. Officially. Comfortable pension, quiet life, nothing suspicious, nothing unusual, except one detail. 8 years ago, immediately after the accident, Michael had briefly participated in the investigation. Only briefly, long enough to access evidence, long enough to influence reports, long enough to make things disappear. The realization made me physically ill. I drove across the city in pouring rain. The world outside blurred through the windshield. Memories flooded back. Conversations. Small details. Things that once seemed insignificant. Now, they felt different. Now they felt like clues. By evening, I stood outside Michael's house. A large property on the outskirts of Manchester. Expensive. Far more expensive than a retired detective should reasonably afford. My stomach tightened. The rain continued falling. The house glowed warmly behind tall windows. Normal. Ordinary. And somehow that made everything worse. I watched for nearly 2 hours. At last Michael appeared. Older now. Gray-haired. Heavier. But unmistakably Michael. The man I had once trusted with my life. The man Emily's voice had led me toward. That night I received another call. 217 a.m. Exactly. The ringtone shattered the silence. I answered immediately. Emily. Static. Then her voice. Closer than ever before. Dad. Tears filled my eyes instantly. I'm here. A pause. Then, tomorrow. My pulse quickened. What happens tomorrow? The line crackled. Everything. The word barely reached me. Then came another. Basement. The connection weakened. Static swallowed most of the sound. Whose basement? For several seconds, nothing. Then Emily whispered. His. The call ended. I didn't sleep. The following morning, armed with a warrant obtained through former contacts and mounting evidence, I returned to Michael's property. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. Even then. Even after everything. Because some betrayals hurt too much to be true. The search began shortly after noon. Michael remained calm. Too calm. He smiled politely, answered questions, pretended confusion, until investigators opened the basement. Then, everything changed. The room hidden behind a false wall contained boxes, documents, old electronic devices, financial records, and evidence. Enough evidence to destroy multiple lives. The truth emerged piece by piece. Years earlier, Michael had been involved with a criminal network connected to vehicle theft and insurance fraud. Emily's accident had not been random. The black SUV belonged to one of his associates. The driver had been fleeing another crime. Michael helped bury the truth to protect people who could expose him. 3 innocent people died, including my daughter, and for 8 years he had lived comfortably while families grieved. When the handcuffs finally clicked around his wrists, Michael looked at me. Not angry, not afraid, ashamed, perhaps for the first time. I never meant for her to die. His voice shook. The same voice from the recording. The same voice Emily had helped me remember. I stared at him and realized something. Hatred had exhausted me long ago. There was nothing left. Only sadness. Deep, ancient, endless sadness. Because no punishment could return what I had lost. The trial dominated headlines for months. Corruption. Evidence tampering. Criminal conspiracy. The public devoured every detail. But none of it mattered to me. Not really. The only thing that mattered was the truth. Emily had been right. I had been right. The accident was never truly an accident, and now the world finally knew. Winter arrived quietly. The rain eventually gave way to frost, then snow. Life continued, as life always does. Yet something inside me had begun to change. The weight I carried for 8 years no longer felt quite so crushing. Not gone, never gone, but lighter, as though someone had finally opened a window inside a room that had remained locked for years. Then came the final night, December 14th, exactly 8 years after Emily's death. I knew the call would come. The certainty settled over me all day. When evening arrived, I sat beside the phone. The apartment remained silent. Snow drifted beyond the glass. The city glowed softly beneath winter lights. For once, I wasn't afraid. 2:17 a.m. The phone rang. One time, only once. I answered. Emily. No static, no interference. Only silence. Beautiful silence. Then her voice, perfectly clear. Daddy. The words shattered me completely. I closed my eyes. Tears slid down my face. Hi, sweetheart. For the first time, she sounded happy. Not frightened, not distant. Happy. It's okay now. My chest tightened. The room blurred through tears. I know. Another pause. Soft, gentle. The kind of pause shared between people who love one another. Then she laughed. A tiny laugh. Exactly as I remembered. The laugh of a 9-year-old girl chasing pigeons through a park. The laugh of birthday candles and Christmas mornings. The laugh I thought I had lost forever. I missed you. I missed you too. The silence returned. But it no longer felt sad. Only peaceful. Then Emily spoke one final time. I love you, Dad. The words nearly broke my heart. I love you too. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, I held the phone tightly, not wanting the moment to end, not wanting goodbye. But some goodbyes are gifts. Some goodbyes heal. I have to go now. My eyes closed. Fresh tears appeared. I know. Another pause. Then, don't be lonely anymore. The line became quiet, very quiet. Then I heard her breathing fade, slowly, gently, like someone walking toward a distant light. And finally, she whispered goodbye. The call ended. The screen went dark. The apartment fell silent. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. An hour. The phone never rang again. Not that night. Not the next. Not ever. Weeks later, I visited Emily's grave. Snow covered the cemetery. The world seemed softer somehow, less cruel. I stood there for a long time, speaking quietly, telling her everything, the truth, the justice, the peace she had given me. When I finally turned to leave, sunlight broke through the clouds. A single beam illuminated the snow, and for one impossible moment, I thought I saw a little girl standing among the light, smiling. Then she was gone. Perhaps it was imagination. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was love. In the end, the reason didn't matter, because some spirits do not return for revenge. They do not return to haunt. They return because a story remains unfinished, because truth still matters, because love refuses to disappear, and because somewhere beyond grief, beyond time, and beyond death itself, a daughter wanted her father to know that she was finally at peace.